Good evening and welcome to Thursdays with NAMI. My name is Peg Morrison. I'll be your host for the evening. I'm the Director of Programs with NAMI North Carolina. That's the National Alliance on Mental Illness, North Carolina. And Thursdays with NAMI is our way of building community and building conversations on the topic of mental health. First thing I want to do is acknowledge the trauma sustained in our nation's capital yesterday when a violent mob overtook the Capitol building. This kind of attack affects all of us, regardless of our politics. It affects our basic feelings of stability and safety. At NAMI North Carolina, we are here for you. Our whole team is here for you. Our helpline, our free classes, our free support groups are really great ways to check in, get support, make sure that you're feeling okay. It's hard to process these difficult times. It's hard to cope with uncertainty. So please feel free to join us, and you can get more information from the chat box right now. All right, my boss, Executive Director Garry shared a wonderful quote yesterday, which I'd like to share. It's from Abraham Lincoln, his inauguration speech, a quick excerpt. With malice towards none, with charity for all, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds. So on with the show. For this first program of 2021, we'll be focusing on the journey that is NAMI North Carolina. This organization is a second family to so many of us and has come through difficult times to get where we are today. My perception is that we're in a pretty good space, pretty darn good place. What happened behind the scenes along the way? Our guests, Board President Judy Jenkins and Executive Director, the aforementioned Garry will be telling that story in just a few moments. As usual, the first part of our show will be an interview with our esteemed guests. About halfway through, we'll show a video of the week, and then we'll spend time answering questions from you, our beloved virtual studio audience. Now, a quick word from our sponsors. Thursdays with NAMI is sponsored in part by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services through the Federal Community Mental Health Services Block Grant Fund. We so appreciate their guidance and support. I say it every week and it's true. Now, without further ado, let's get to the heart of the matter. Quick introductions and then we'll get to our questions. Judy Jenkins recently retired from a 25-year career at Otsuka Pharmaceutical, where she set strategic priorities for the Mid-Atlantic region for government policy and advocacy. You can imagine she's been a big help to us here at NAMI in that area. Judy has 2 bachelor's degrees, one in management from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and one in nursing from Pacific Lutheran University. She also has an executive master's in leadership from Georgetown University. Garry came to us from Duke University. A lot of education going on the screen here tonight. He spent 20 plus years in various roles, starting as a doctoral student in religion and history and ending as Director of Operations for TIP, otherwise known as the Talent Identification Program. After joining us in August 2018, Garry had about an hour to catch his breath before COVID-19 took over the scene and changed everything. Since then, his leadership has kept services going and kept morale pretty darn high during these unprecedented times. Thanks to both of you for being here.
Thanks, Peg.
Thanks, Peg.
And thanks for all that you do. I'll just say that up front. So this is for both of you, and we can start with Judy since she's my boss's boss. We always like to get to know our guests and what brought you here tonight, get the backstory. So please tell us about yourselves.
Thank you, Peg, for inviting me. First of all, NAMI has been a part of my life for the better part of about 14 years. Working with NAMI is a true joy for me. I believe in the programming that NAMI provides, how they are able to assist communities that they are in, and also just the humanity that they are able to give everyday life. I hope tonight I can share a bit of my own perspective about my work here at NAMI North Carolina and also learn about areas that we need to focus on in the future. And I'm very glad to share the stage with Garry. Garry?
Thanks, Judy. Judy's been here for 14 years. I've been here for about 17 months, just under a year and a half. As Peg said, I did come from Duke after being there for being in an academic setting for a lot of years, running helping to run the TIP program and also running the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. I actually am an ordained minister. I've been ordained for over 35 years now. And I did a lot of counseling when I was a pastor. It was a serious portion of my work. And so mental health has always been near and dear to my heart. What brought me specifically to TIP was, honestly, it was a very personal reason. I have a family member that deals with severe mental health challenges. And it was a way for me not only to help her, but also for me to help myself. And so I came here in August of a year ago, and I've loved being here. I've loved coming to work every day.
All right, well, it's mutual with the team. So when I joined NAMI North Carolina in June of 2018, we were emerging from a difficult time. There were several years in which NAMI North Carolina was not really living within its means. Foundation funds had been used to cover normal expenses. We owed money to our local affiliates. It wasn't pretty. Judy, you were part of the team that brought us back from the edge, and it's one of the reasons we appreciate you. What can you tell us about that time?
You know, I will say that time was a very dark time for NAMI North Carolina. I think the community lost trust in whether or not we could deliver on our vision and mission. I believe affiliates lost trust that the state organization could be trusted. We had back payments to affiliates for programming they had already delivered. We overstaffed for what our current priorities were at the time. We also changed direction from a cultural perspective. And the change in cultural perspective, not that it wasn't needed, I don't think it was vetted by staff and by the board. So at that time, we had an executive director that took a lot of liberties to implement strategies, to change direction on his own without proper guidance from the board, and also vetting these decisions with his staff. I think it also left NAMI North Carolina in a very precarious financial situation, to the point where we were willing and even discussing selling the state office. We're one of the few state affiliates that actually owns real estate and owns the office that we're in. We don't rent our space, we actually own it. And I think it really took a shakeup from the Friends of NAMI and some other community leaders that have been involved with NAMI over the decades to actually ask, what the heck is going on? Do you all know what's going on? Is there a way to right this ship? How did NAMI get to where it was? But I would tell you the story of redemption after that is probably the story that we need to really focus on. Nicole Karam was promoted from the policy director to an interim executive director. She had to make a lot of tough decisions, to cut budgets, to realign staffing, to really evaluate what were the nut and bolt priorities that NAMI needed to be focused on. So we really pared down. There was very little to any training going on. There was very little assistance to affiliates. And it was probably the right decision at the time, but it was a tough pill to swallow. Then we had a change in the guard of the board. So David Smith came in and really started processing, how do we evaluate how NAMI operates? Let's really look at how we operate. Let's look at our priorities. Hiring Garry was the best decision that NAMI North Carolina made, because he was able to not only stabilize the state office, retain the staff that we wanted to retain. And I think that is a very important point. You know, Deb came back out of retirement to rescue us for a while. She stayed longer than than she had initially said she could. And so there were a lot of changes at NAMI North Carolina, but I think we can all agree, and Peg, you kind of led into this in your introduction. We are probably the strongest NAMI North Carolina has been in at least the past 5 years that I have been with NAMI North Carolina. So thank you, Garry. Thank you, Peg, for holding the ship together.
Well, it's certainly been a great experience for me to be here. When I prepared for my interview to come down here, I remember reading a newsletter on the NAMI NC website with a letter from David Smith saying, we need to restore your trust in us. We've made mistakes. And I really liked the transparency of that. I had no background information, but I thought, well, whatever they're going through, they're dealing with it head on in a manner that reflects some integrity and commitment. And I had 5 years of experience at NAMI Ohio, so I thought I could be helpful. And I knew I loved North Carolina. I'd been down to visit my sister, and you know, there's sunshine here. My goodness. Garry, do you have anything to add? I know some of this predates you.
Yeah, most of it does predate me, but it's always interesting to hear it, because when I came in when NAMI was already back going towards a healthy way. And so my vision of NAMI has always been a NAMI that is getting stronger and stronger and stronger because of the leadership on the board and on the staff for the last few years.
Right, and also the guy sitting in your chair, I think. Okay, so next question goes to Garry first. You joined NAMI NC in August 2019 and had hardly any time to get acclimated to NAMI. There's really a lot to learn. We're a very detail-oriented, complex kind of organization. And then COVID-19 came in and just changed everything. What were the high and low points of those first 8-9 months?
The high points were getting to know people. I was getting the opportunity to visit affiliates. I'm just really committed to the idea that the state office serves to be the servant of the affiliates, to be there for them, to do what they need. And so it was wonderful. I was getting the opportunity to go to Fayetteville, to go to Asheville, to go to Boone, to go to Cherokee. So getting to know the affiliates, the board, who get a really good board, because our board knows how to balance management without micromanagement. And that is a really hard balance to maintain. David did a masterful job in it, and Judy has a very different management style from David, and yet David was exactly what was needed at NAMI when he was the president, and Judy is exactly what NAMI needs at this stage of the career. And then for me, of course, the high point was getting to know my staff. The staff are like my family, and such an incredibly remarkably talented group of people. It was fun to find out what people, I mean, Peg and I are both from Ohio, and we got a lot of Midwesterners, and we fight during football season. We just have a really good relationship. One of the high points also was celebrating the 35th anniversary. That was just fun. Not only to have the annual conference, to have incredible speakers and poetry, and but also just to be able to have a party to celebrate. And then COVID-19 hit. We actually were getting ready to go, the board was getting ready to go off on retreat. It was 2 days before we were ready to take off, and we made the decision, based upon everything that we're seeing, we have to pull the plug on this. And it was tough because we were going to use it for team building, but we were also going to use it for strategic planning. But for me, the challenge of COVID-19 is not the changing of programming, it's not to me as the director, the challenge of COVID-19 was the fact that it was taking a real toll on real people. It wasn't simply programming. Staff members were having to grapple. Is it safe for me to work at the office? Or if I have to go home, if I'm working from my home, is my job safe? Am I going to lose my job if I have to be home for 6 months? How do I balance working full time with taking care of my child, making sure my child is able to go to class each day? It increased the stress and the workload of Helpline. So to me, the low point is not the mechanics that COVID-19 forced us to do, but the toll that it was taking on people that I really care about.
Right. And a very lovely comment from Diane Crescenda, Executive Director of, or rather Board President of NAMI South Mountains. Garry and the staff are exceptional. Well, so are you, Diane.
Thank you, Diane.
And Judy, did you have any follow-up to that?
You know, I think Garry's right. Oftentimes we've looked at the pandemic and the closing of the economy on the very aspects of how it affects our work, but I don't think we look at it as far as how does it affect the people that rely on NAMI North Carolina. And, you know, one thing I found out while talking to the affiliate presidents is that they have really had to be nimble and agile to deliver what they need to deliver to their communities, because their communities are still relying on them. So programming may look different, support groups may look different, but they are still out there trying to find out how to deliver programming, how to train their volunteers, how to be a part of their communities, and also be there as a support for their communities. We have affiliate presidents that are calling people just to check in because maybe they weren't able to have a support group. We have other affiliate presidents looking for venues that are large enough for them to actually have support groups, knowing that they have to manage how many people actually participate. So I think what COVID has done that is the most devastating for us is that it has isolated us. And so you're either isolated with your family, if you're fortunate enough to have your family in your home, but many of us are isolated by ourselves. And we thrive off of the personal interaction that we have with people when you can meet with someone face to face. You know, I was thinking of this year over the holidays, I have not been able to give my 84-year-old dad a hug since March, right? And we couldn't have Christmas or Thanksgiving with him because he's 85 years old and we don't live in the same house. My husband travels for a living, so we don't know if we could be just asymptomatic or carriers of the virus. So, you know, I think that's the real toll that COVID has had. We're seeing an increase in suicides. We're seeing increase in depression, increase in substance use, increase in addictive behaviors because people are trying to cope the best way they can. And without their normal routines, this is the best they can do. While at the same time, on the healthcare front, healthcare is retracting, right? Healthcare has become telemedicine. When is the last time you interacted with somebody by video and it was therapeutic? I mean, just think about that, right? You attend therapy because there's a certain level of energy and trust that you make when you are face to face with someone, when you can look someone in the eyes, when someone can reach out and give you a pat on the back, when they can tell you it's going to be okay. Yes, we have to do all those things now virtually, but we also have to realize that there are some limitations when everything is done electronically, everything is done from a distance.
I think, Judy, your point is really well taken as far as what isolation, you know, there's a difference between social distancing and social isolation. And sometimes we cross that boundary over the last year. And it's especially frightening because in some cases, people that have food insecurity, that literally children may not know from one week to the next, whether they'll have food, and yet they're cut off from the options to have food. A dark side also, we don't like to talk about it, but in some cases, people are trapped in a home with somebody who is abusive over the course of all of these dark sides that are caused by, I mean, we think about, oh, sure, I could live away from people for a while, but there's a dark side to it.
Mhm.
And all of these things have impacts not only on our culture, impact on ourselves, but impact on mental health. I don't think that NAMI has ever been more needed than it is right now.
Yeah,
Agree.
a lot of good points there, a lot to unpack. I definitely agree with the point about isolation. And for me, as a single person, it's hard to balance. And really, with everyone who, well, not everyone, but so many people who live with mental health challenges, isolation is a factor, loneliness is a factor in their lives. And I don't know, a year or so ago, they came out with a study that said isolation and loneliness have the same impact on your health as 15 cigarettes a day, smoking that many cigarettes a day. So you're sort of weighing the risk of isolation and loneliness with the risk of exposure to COVID-19. And it's not a fun balancing act. Yeah, and Garry, to your point, definitely the abuse. I know families where someone used to travel all the time, or maybe that intense pressure of having the kids at home and parents working at home and all the energy and patience that needs to go into having a child doing school online. It's just changed so many dynamics. So a lot of good stuff to cover. I think we have addressed the next question I had, but I'll ask it because I like the way I comically wrote it. The year 2020 has been described as unprecedented, hellacious, and a dumpster fire. How was NAMI North Carolina impacted, and how did the team respond? I do think we covered that, but if you'd like to add anything now, you could.
You know, the only part, Peg, that I didn't get into earlier is the impact it's had on the board. If you think about, here we are now, there's two boards that are kind of overlapping. So we just had elections in September, but the previous board, Garry, we didn't meet in March. So we met January and February, and that was it for in-person meetings. And I believe there may have been inclement weather one of those days, so we didn't have a full board meeting of people attending in person. So I wonder what that impact has been on the board kind of developing its own personality. You know, are we as cohesive as we would be if we were meeting every month? If we had the opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better. So I asked the board to participate and put together a picture collage and to explain the pictures in their collage. And the reason why I did that is because how else are we going to get to know each other if we don't have something of a personal nature? You know, you ask people who they are, and the first thing they want to tell you is what they do for a living, or what they did for a living, or where they went to school. Very rarely do people want to talk about or naturally talk about their personal life and their families. So I think, Peg, you know, we have to look at the inability to meet in person. It probably just, the impact is probably not just on the board, but I'm assuming community inclusion activities have been affected. Programming has been affected. All of these places where we normally go to meet people have been affected. So I think that is kind of the undercurrent of COVID. And then we look at 21 with all of the hopes riding on vaccines. You know, I don't think it's hit any of us that the reality is we probably won't be to a point of people being vaccinated until probably early summer, to the point, because, you know, everything I hear is people want to know when they can stop wearing a mask. And I would challenge people, if you wore a mask, then maybe we wouldn't be where we are now with the COVID rates, right? So
That's a good point. It's true, the affiliates had to rise to the occasion in terms of community inclusion. I'm glad you mentioned that. And of course, for those who aren't familiar, community inclusion is our program and a statewide program with other nonprofits as well, where we look at folks with mental illness and say, how can we pull them into the larger network of society, the larger fabric, rather than having a special team, a special book club for folks with mental illness. How can we pull people into the resources that already exist and sort of take a more mainstream approach? Because everyone deserves to feel a part of the community, but not all of us do. I also have the urge to plug some of the staff, which has already been done to an extent, but in particular, Virginia, our helpline manager, who has really risen to the occasion with an increase in calls and emails in particular from people having COVID-related anxiety. Garry works so many hours to support the staff and has managed to help us remain a really effective team, even with about half of us working from home so that those here can socially distance. Michaela Cardona really bent over backwards to help affiliates learn how to use Zoom, do technical assistance with them, and get the programs online. We all were part of that, but she was really very active in that and proactive in that. So I just want to plug them. Anything else you'd like to add, Garry?
You know, when I was thinking about COVID-19 in the previous question, and it's easy to talk about the painful impacts that it's having, and yet how has NAMI North Carolina been impacted? I think we can also celebrate the things that came out really good. We had to pull the plug on our signature fundraising event of the year, NAMI Walks. We had a target of a little bit north of 150,000. And we decided when we pulled the plug that if we hit 100,000, we were going to consider ourselves so fortunate. And yet, because of the hard work of the staff, of affiliate leaders really stepping up to the plate, so many walk leaders, we almost hit our regular normal target. We have people that are finding creative ways to do fundraising. We're finding ways to do programming that we never thought. So COVID-19 has had a negative impact, but it's also given us the opportunity to explore what are new ways that we can do things. And that's been exciting to watch.
Right, excellent. And so for our next question, it goes to Judy first. I'm sorry, Garry first. Looking ahead, what is your vision for 2021? Tell us about the strategic plan.
The board was going to, as I said, go away to work on the strategic plan, and we weren't able to. And so the lion's share of it was done by Judy and Sharon and some Amy, some board members and so forth, and then with the help of the board and the staff. And I'll let Judy address more about the strategic plan, but there are 4 areas of focus, I think. To me, a strategic plan is not simply something that you pass and put on the shelf. It drives the decisions that you make. And so very briefly, for instance, one of the goals of the strategic plan is ensure that people get help early. That's really important to us. You know, it allows us to start thinking, for instance, with the legislation that passed this last year of school-based mental health, what can we do in order to implement legislation, in order to partner with people within the schools to make sure that kids are getting help early? Are there ways that we can change our focus? We've traditionally been adult focused. Are there ways that we can legitimately step into the arena of working with youth? I think it's worth exploring the next year. One of the goals is ensure people get the best possible care. We have world-renowned signature programs. I mean, they're known everywhere. They're excellent, but there are huge swaths of the state where we have no affiliates whatsoever. There are large sections where within a county, there is one mental health professional. How can we make sure that care gets to areas? North Carolina is not all urban. We think of it in terms of its urban area. Geographically, most of North Carolina is rural. One of the goals is to become the leading voice on mental health in North Carolina. And there are lots of ways to look at that, but there's a couple that are I'm really thinking about for 2021. One is that we have to become known for our advocacy. Um, I don't want us to be behind the curve when it comes to advocacy. I want us to be leading. I want us to be ahead of the curve when we're responding to crisis. When what happened yesterday, I don't want to follow up and be the last person to make a statement on issues that need to be dealt with. We hired an amazingly talented public policy director, Ashish George, and I think he's just going to do phenomenal things. The other thing that I'd like to do to become the leading voice is that I want NAMI North Carolina to be the recognized authority on mental health, so that when there is a mental health issue in the news, that WRAL is going to call NAMI to get their opinion on it. I would like staff presenting at every conference that we go to. I would like us to be writing articles for the paper and so forth. And then the last goal of the strategic plan is to strengthen the state organization. That is, to me, is very much in-house. It is a goal of mine as a director to work for maximum efficiency here in the office. We are understaffed, grossly understaffed for the amount of work that we need to do, but we have to work smart. Until the time when we can add more staff, we need to work smart. We have to make sure that people are working on the jobs that they're gifted on and not just piling 2 or 3 jobs onto one person because somebody's got to do it. And the final thing related to strengthening our organization, and I've mentioned this so many times, I know people have to be getting sick of it. We have to have less dependency on funding from the government. To me, that is critical. Right now, about 50% of our funding comes through the government. I would like to get it down to around 35%. For us to do that, it's going to require some really creative fundraising. But to me, that's central. So those are some of the things I'm looking at this next year for the strategic plan. Judy, I'll yield to you because you're the authority on this strategic plan.
I think you did a great job, Garry, in going through the strategic plan. You know, I will say, and Peg, if you don't mind, I think I'll just kind of lead into your next question for me. What other changes have I seen during my tenure with NAMI North Carolina? I will tell you, there has been a lot of change of the board, right? We're term limited. There are times where folks' personal priorities or work priorities conflict with NAMI, and they may have to resign from the board. But I will tell you, this group of individuals we have right now on the board, they are go-getters. They are energized, they're motivated, they're leaders in their communities. You know, Diane Crisanda is just one of the many gems that we have now on the board. And I think it's a great opportunity for this board to really shine, because the stronger we are individually will make us all stronger as a whole. When I look at how NAMI has responded to, you know, the racial unrest and injustice that has happened in 2020, the political climate that has really pulled us into 2 separate Americas. When you look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, what does that really mean? And what is the responsibility of a civic organization that is a support organization? What is that responsibility for them to either have a diversity, equity, and inclusion platform, or for them to just not stand in the way? And I think, you know, one board member really asked, you know, what are we going to do about diversity, equity, and inclusion? It really bothered him. And so from that, the board created a committee for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the goal of this committee is to really find a way that NAMI can reflect the communities that we work in, how we can be more open-minded and embracing and welcoming to everyone in our community, how we can not stigmatize people that are stigmatized every day. Even going to the doctor is a stigmatizing event. So how can we be a true support and not get in the way of someone's recovery, someone's pathway back to just a happier time in their lives? I think of the staff we have at NAMI North Carolina right now. It is incredible. All of you do 3 and 4 jobs. Garry may hear a little bit of the grumblings, but I never hear any grumblings. I don't hear anyone being short or curt or sharp with board members if they call and ask for assistance, or affiliate presidents. I think at NAMI North Carolina, everyone is doing the best that they can do, and everyone is giving 200 and 300%. And I just want the staff and the affiliate presidents to know that I appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I know I can't say it enough, and I don't say it enough, but we all see you and we hear you. And for people who are in need of help, people who need a hug, you're not alone. NAMI North Carolina is here for you. You can reach out to our helpline. All of you know how to get in contact with Garry. Anytime you need to be in contact with a board member, Garry can assist you in getting you in contact with us. You're not alone. If there are things that we can be doing better, let us know. If you have great ideas of things you would like to see us do, let us know. But I think the trend right now is that NAMI North Carolina is agile and nimble, and we are adapting to whatever environmental pressures are falling upon us. One thing we will all have to be prepared for in 2021 is how the delivery system is going to change for our members who receive their services through the state Medicaid program. And so that change is going to happen during the summer, and we all have to be aware that there may be some disruptions in care. But NAMI North Carolina will find the right answers and the right people that can help you ensure that you maintain a continuity of care that is going to be healthy for you. That's all, Peg.
Well, thank you on behalf of the staff. I tell people sometimes that with my work at NAMI, I get to feel authentic and appreciated at the same time. And that's a pretty rare gift. I've also been blessed with a lot of good people that I've worked for, not 100%, but I've had good bosses. But Garry's unique in his ability to read people and support people in just the way that they need, and to put people at ease. So yeah, a lot of blessings here. And I also want to thank affiliates who they come to us and they kind of apologize. I know you're so busy, but I know they're so busy doing volunteer work that they don't have to do, because it helps their own recovery. It helps their own situation to give back. And it's humbling to see how much our affiliates do. And I really do appreciate them. Garry?
I think you just touched on something. I think when you talk about the changes that I've seen, one of the changes I've seen even in my small tenure here is it's really neat to see the staff and the affiliates not only working together, but actively liking each other. Our goal in the main office has been to be available to the affiliates so that they would know who they can contact and then where they can go to. And what I hear from affiliates is, I really like your staff. They're doing a great job. And what I'm hearing from the staff so often is they're loving working with affiliate leaders, affiliate presidents. And so that's a really good dynamic. And I think my sense is that's probably a rare dynamic. I think a lot of times a state organization and the local organization can almost be seen as adversaries. And I think we're moving to the point where we're not adversaries. We're actually partners in this together.
Well said.
I agree. And I think you said it, Garry, that our role is to serve the affiliates and help them grow. And positioning ourselves that way it's made an amazing difference. That's my perspective also. So what have we got coming up next? Have there been any other defining moments, this is to either or both of you, that I haven't asked about? What did I miss? Let's keep probing.
I don't know, Peg. On my part, I don't think you missed anything. I think Garry and I already plugged in the holes where we saw fit. I think we're on the precipice of really great things in NAMI North Carolina. And I'm looking forward to 2021 and very hopeful for the future of NAMI North Carolina.
For me, the defining moment of this last year, and Judy suggested it already, the defining moment for me this last year was the killing of George Floyd. That was because it forced us to have discussions that we don't want to have, but we desperately have to have. It made us grapple with inequities in our culture in ways that we haven't had to grapple with for years. I mean, we've been talking about diversity since the mid-60s. And my sense is we make some progress, but as I've said many times before, we have a tendency to have checklists. You know, if we have a person of each population on our board, then we've done the checklist. If we have a committee, we've done the checklist. And my sense is that diversity, equity, inclusion is something much, much deeper than that. It's not simply having checklists. The problem with when we talk about diversity is we can think that if we check that box, then we are now diverse. When I think what we're really needing to ask ourselves, are we putting up any barriers, not only to people getting help, but to people feeling like they can be actively involved? That's a hugely important question. After the killing of George Floyd, I don't know if I will ever, I don't know if I'll ever forget the board meeting we had right after that. We started by just doing board stuff, and then we just had to call a halt because there were members of the board that were hurting, and they were feeling violated. They were feeling unsafe. They were feeling that they couldn't allow their children to go anywhere because they didn't know if their child would maybe come back. And so we just took the rest of the board meeting and just listened. I've been involved in nonprofit work, whether it be in the church, whether it be at Duke, whether it be here, for my entire career. I don't know that I have ever experienced a more important board meeting than that day.
I would agree, Garry. I think, one thing I took away from yesterday's news of the breach of the U.S. Capitol is the difference in the policing of violently behaving people storming the U.S. Capitol and peaceful protesters during the Black Lives Matters rallies. And I've seen pictures of it. You all have probably seen pictures of it. But for one of the DC Black Lives Matters protests during the summer, you had completely combat ready police officers standing at the Lincoln Memorial. Yesterday, you had police officers pouring water over people's faces after being tear gassing them, helping a woman off of the Capitol steps. This is someone who just breached the Capitol. And it made me really think of our society, the hidden aggressors that are out there that some people believe an unarmed Black man is more dangerous than a white man carrying a gun. And it doesn't matter if that person is a police officer, a military member, or an innocent bystander on the street. And I think we have to, at times, be honest with ourselves. We all have our own prejudices. We all have our own baggage because we all have our own lives, right? So I have a tendency to not rush to call someone a name or a label. I look at from the perspective of what has that person's life experience been? Have they had the opportunity to meet people who look different from them? Have they had the opportunity to interact with people that are not in their communities? And I think if we all approach each other that way and take the labels off, you know, we've become a society that we want to give everybody a label. At the same time, nobody wants to be labeled, right? But we all want to be identified as something. But if the wrong person identifies you as something else, then there's a grievance to be made. So I think we're at a point in our society where we have to lower the temperature and we have to stop taking everything that happens personally. And sometimes I think we just have to step back. And everything that happens doesn't necessarily deserve a comment. Because sometimes I think by commenting, we give more life to certain things that happen than maybe they deserve. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Thank you.
A lot of good comments there. I agree. I'm glad you brought that up, Gary. That was definitely a defining moment that needed to be acknowledged. And not that I was at that board meeting, but in general, that issue. And it does feel like this is a conversation finally that is going to stay on the table. It's not a flavor of the month because there was a tragedy recently. It is a conversation that's going to stay on the table. And I feel like there's always more work to be done, but I feel like there's a lot of sincerity and integrity going into this issue right now. All right. So we are past our halfway point. So it's time to wrap up the interview portion of the show. Before we move into our video of the week, a big shout out to someone working behind the scenes, psychiatric nurse Gail Pruitt. Thank you so much for being here this evening and working our chat box. And of course, thanks to Garry and Judy for spending your time with us tonight and all of your insights. Video of the week, I thought we might want something light this week to take our mind off all the things we've been discussing. So this is our lovely mascot, Beagle American Roxy Morrison. This was put together by our fabulous tech intern, Eddie Simmons, who unfortunately could not join us tonight, but here goes.
I love that dog.
Video.
Yeah, so that's our baby here at NAMI North Carolina. If you stop in someday in a socially distanced manner, of course, you can see her. And I gotta say, that's my favorite music of all the wonderful videos Eddie has done. I like that kind of bluesy feel to that one. Alrighty, so now it's time for us to take questions from you, our virtual studio audience. If you're new to Zoom, you might be wondering, how do I ask a question? It's pretty simple. You want to click on the Q&A icon with little bubbles at the bottom of your monitor. Type in your question and it will magically be delivered to us. I don't see any right now. I will check our Facebook stream. That looks all clear too. Of course, I've got my own trusty list, which we didn't quite get through. How has your work with NAMI impacted you personally?
Gary, you want to go first?
Having a child with a mental illness, I've been benefited. Not only is this a job that I love, but my work with NAMI has allowed me to learn the resources that are available out there. It's helped me to realize that recovery is possible, because sometimes you feel pretty alone and you think, will we ever get through this? And to learn that recovery is possible, it's really been helpful for me. Recently, my wife and I were in a family-to-family class, and I had to say several times, I'm not the principal here. I happen to be the director of NAMI North Carolina, but here I'm a dad. I'm a dad tonight. So it's been an amazing impact on my life by what I've learned. So I'm very grateful for that.
I really cherish the time that I have to work with NAMI. I get a lot of joy out of working with NAMI, and it's because of the passion and smart people that I get to meet being a part of the NAMI family. I look at mental health and mental illness as the great equalizers. And the reason why I say that, because the mental health system is fragmented and broken. Oftentimes people are in despair. They don't know what to do. I had my first experience with the mental health system when my college-age daughter at the time decided to take a handful of Tylenol because she was depressed during finals week. And with her being over 18, going to an emergency room and being told that they would have to ask my daughter if she wanted to see me, I was completely heartbroken. And they said, well, we don't know. You could be the cause of your daughter's depression. And I was like, what? Right? I never thought about that. But oftentimes parents are the cause of the pain that their children feel. Not always, but sometimes abusive parents are. But one thing I've learned since I've been with NAMI, and there are so many people in the NAMI North Carolina family that exhibit this, is that NAMI people do. They do for their communities, they do for their families, they do for themselves. And, I know we've kind of coined the slogan this year that you are not alone, but that has been the philosophy of NAMI as long as I've been working with NAMI, and that's been 14 years. I have never met a NAMI person that has said no. I look at the great work that Fonda Bryant does to drive awareness of suicide in Charlotte. I look at how connected Diane Cresanda is to her neighborhood, to her community, to the neighboring counties around her. I look at how helpful the Friends of NAMI have been to the state organization, to individual affiliates. And the fact that people, once they become involved with NAMI, they're always a part of the family. And so when my term limit is up and I'm no longer on the board, I know I will still be active with NAMI just because there's a family and there's always work to be done.
Yeah, your comments captured some of the themes that I get to see when I review class evaluations from all over the state and family to family and peer to peer. The big messages that come through are, I realized I'm not alone. I realized it wasn't my fault. I realized help is available. Those are so powerful. It's such a powerful difference to make in a person's life, to help them realize they're not to blame and they don't have to go it alone. one thing that COVID took away was the in-person national convention. And I always embrace that. I always see it as a little bit of a family reunion. So that was a loss, I think, in 2020.
And
All right,
21.
Right. We do have some questions in our Q&A box. Thanks, Diane Chrysanda, for coming through in the crunch. Garry, how are we planning to move forward with FaithNet, churches, and mental health?
Yeah, that's a real high priority to me. I'm a firm believer that our religious traditions can be both an incredible asset in our mental health journey, and it can also be a tremendous liability. Liability because of the stigmas, liabilities, we still hear, if you're depressed, you just need to spend more time with the Lord, and then you won't be depressed anymore. And the other problem that I have, and I've mentioned this, I know, to the board several times, as an ordained minister, I took a lot of counseling, and I did a lot of counseling, took a lot, but the average person coming out of seminary has at most one class in pastoral counseling, which is enough to make the person very, very dangerous. And so one of the things that I'm trying to prioritize is not only take the resources that we do have in NAMI, like FaithNet, and find ways that I can start to interact with groups around the state. I've spoken to Faith Connections. I'm going to be at a church dealing with their Stephen ministers in about a month. I'm also planning on I've started developing relationships with ministerial associations around the state. To try to take the resources that we have. The good thing is that this is also a priority of Dan, our president, our CEO. And so I think it's a really good time to step into this. So those are some of the things that I'm planning, at least right now.
Judy, do you have any thoughts that come to mind for you on FaithNet or churches and mental health?
I think it's a natural place for us to be. If you look at churches, have always been probably the primary support system for most people throughout their lives. And I think it's where people go when they're hurting, right? But also some of the most joyous occasions in our lives also happen in churches. So I think it's always been a safe place for people. And so it will be nice for people to be able to find and connect with NAMI there. And I think it also gives us some resources that we don't currently have, venues for classes and for support groups that we may not have in some communities. So I think it's a great partnership.
Dr. Harold Koenig, who is a psychiatrist over at Duke, has done some really interesting research on the relationship between religion and health in general, and also mental health. And he's found out in his research is that there is a connection between religious belief and improved health, and it has nothing to do whatsoever with lifestyle. Like, well, I don't drink as much because I'm religious. It has nothing to do with that. And so it's controversial work, but they're two arenas that it seems logical to find ways that we can touch the two arenas together.
Absolutely. So many people from their church find a sense of meaning and find connection to other people. So it makes sense to me. All right, Judy, next one is for you. At this time, what do you feel the most pressing issue will be as we move out of COVID-19?
I actually think the most pressing issue is going to be adapting to a hybrid way of doing things. Although doing things in isolation and through distancing and through electronics has been a burden to some, I would dare say there are people who have actually thrived because they have access, because they may have disabilities, or they may not have transportation to get out and participate. So I think we're going to have to find a way that we are going to be able to deliver our events in a hybrid fashion with an electronic connection and link, as well as an in-person event. And It will probably take a little bit more work in the beginning, but I think it's definitely something that we can deliver. And Gary, we had already thought about the annual meeting, that we should have a hybrid way of delivering our annual conference, because people can actually connect from all parts of North Carolina. And everybody can't come to one singular location. So I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Gary, thoughts?
I think the evidence is pretty clear that we are going to have a second pandemic of emotional and behavioral health issues once the regular pandemic is over. I don't think that we can allow ourselves to think that, oh, once we have a vaccine and people can be in public again and people can, heaven forbid, take their masks off again, that once we do that, we're going to be fine. We're not going to be fine for a long time. And I don't mean to be pessimistic, and I'm not, because I think that we are ideally positioned to help address some of those things, but we have to be ready because it is coming. It's not a matter of, it's a matter of how great it will be, not whether it will be. So we at NAMI need to start planning ahead. What are we going to do to serve the people of North Carolina once the physical pandemic is over?
Yeah, well, another excellent point. Gary, this next question is to you as well. Gary, during this time, what have you done for self-care?
Oh, that's a really good question. Essential one, because I tell my staff all the time that they have to do self-care, and they are very good at looking at me and saying, uh-huh, and what have you done? So what I do is I carve out 2 hours every Sunday afternoon for me, where I am off limits to my family, I'm off limits to my friends, I'm off limit to everything. That is just for me. 1 week I will be hiking the Eno. The next week I'll be at Barnes and Noble with my computer writing, but that time is sacrosanct to me. And that has been just really immensely helpful for me. If I don't get that, I can tell. It has an impact on my life. The other thing is that I have a counselor myself that I visit on a regular basis. It has been remarkable just to be able to help process things with her, and so I do that for my self-care, and it's been a really helpful thing as well. So those are 2 things right off the top of my head.
All right, spoken like a true role model. And Judy?
You know, I've really taken a liking to yoga. I do a very dynamic form of yoga, high intensity yoga. I try to do that at least every day. And now that my siblings and I have now connected on Apple Fitness Plus, we can see each other's activity levels, which is a bad thing because I don't have my watch on today. So I have like 0 activity. But, you know, I've also taken time to just relax and exhale. I retired on December 31st. So it's nice not having to get up at 6 o'clock every morning, even though I still do naturally, but to be able to get up and kind of enter into life slowly. I've tried to also exercise more gratitude in my daily life, and not just gratitude for others, but also gratitude to myself. Because I think oftentimes we're so busy thanking and acknowledging everybody else's efforts, but we rarely thank ourselves for just being, right? For just being. And I think all of us can carve out some time, like Gary, put it on your schedule. Schedule some time that is not negotiable. That you take that time for yourself, because we all need to recharge.
All right, take time and be grateful for yourself. I've never heard someone put themselves on a gratitude list, but I love that. It makes perfect sense. So that
It does.
Right. Affirmation and self-love. All right, Judy, during this time with COVID, Oh, how have you done self-care? We've covered that one. Gary, what do you see as we move slowly out of COVID when the time comes? We might have dealt with that. What do you think?
I think so.
Oh, Gary, regarding helpline, what are the most pressing issues there?
Helpline is we could do an entire show just on that question. We have our Virginia Rodillas is she is just amazing. She is our helpline manager. And she has staff helping her, but she also has interns and stuff. There are a few things that I see. One, from an external point of view, helpline has seen an incredible growth over the last couple of years. We're it looks great for the numbers, but it's we're seeing some trends. During the early part of COVID-19, we were seeing about 75% of our calls were somehow related to COVID-19. That started to level out and going back to normal, even though our numbers have stayed up there. The other thing is that the helpline are having to deal with issues that are much more challenging issues. People that are threatening self-harm, people that are threatening to harm others and so forth, which is a challenge to begin with because we are primarily a warm line. We're not a hotline that deals with suicide prevention, but sometimes it's put in your lap. And fortunately, Virginia is very good. Gail works with her as well, very good at being able to do that. So that's the mechanical side of the helpline. As a director, as a supervisor, the other side that I have to be concerned about is what is the toll that this is taking on my staff? What is the emotional toll that it's taking on Virginia, her interns, that is taken on Gail? Helpline, somebody that works a hotline, there's typically a very short tenure that a person can do that because it is emotionally draining. And so one of my highest priorities is on a regular basis, like I do with all my staff, but very much with helpline staff and volunteers saying, how are you doing? Are you taking care of yourself? Are there things that you need that we can provide to you? So there are two sides to the same coin. It's one of the most important things that we do, but it's also one of the most draining things that we do.
Yeah, it is. And that sensitivity that makes someone so good, like Virginia Rodillas, our helpline manager, that sensitivity that makes her so good also makes it easier to internalize. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So, comment from Diane Crescenda, the collages were very empowering, the collage project that you referenced for the board. Do you see visiting affiliates and introducing themselves using the collage in affiliate outreach is basically the question.
Sure, why not?
It is now.
I think, Diane, to the point we had mentioned, setting up opportunities for me to meet the boards of the affiliates. And now that we're all virtual, then it's not going to matter geographically how difficult it may be to get to some of them. So this would be a great time for us to set up some Zoom board meetings with affiliates. So
I like that.
Let's get together and get them on the books.
I like that a lot.
All right. And as I always like to point out, you heard it here first. Thursdays with NAMI. It's where groundbreaking things happen. All right. To both of you, what are your hobbies? What are your favorite things to do? As long as we have you, we're going to ask you a lot of questions, apparently.
Go ahead, Judy.
Oh, let's see. So lately, I have been trying to learn Korean or Hangul. That's the language of my mother. And I've also taken a liking to cooking. So I actually cooked a real Christmas dinner and New Year's dinner and Thanksgiving dinner. And this time I actually baked the cakes. I didn't buy them at Costco. And my family actually enjoyed them. So
That's an important postscript.
For me, I am an amateur astronomer. I love astronomy. If I wasn't in this field, I think I would have gone into science. I just love science. I love hiking. Um, I like Judy. I love cooking. I was raised in the kitchen. My dad did all the cooking in my parents' home, and so I was raised in the kitchen with him. We never had any gender roles in our house at all about this is what a woman does, this is what a man does. And so it turned out to be something that I just not only loved, but I was really good about it. So I love doing that. I love curling. I like what the sport. I love watching curling. And probably one of the biggest things is I'm a voracious reader. I usually have 3 to 4 books going at a time.
Wow.
All right. One of the favorite things in the first bio I ever read of you, Gary, is you said, I like curling, the sport, not the hair activity.
That's true.
That's fun. Question from Bob Creighton. Where do you see the Peer Leadership Council headed?
Ooh. Bob, that is a good question. I participated on the National President's Call this afternoon, and the National Peer Leadership Council presented to the presidents. And, that is an area that I really want to support. I think the Peer Leadership Council is very important to the work that NAMI does. I also think it is one of the major reasons why we're all here. And I want us to have a peer leadership council that is able to support the members of NAMI and also give opportunities where people with lived experience can offer their talents back to NAMI members. So, Bob, what do we need to do to get our peer leadership up and running and ready for 2021? Let's have a phone call. Let's talk about it.
Okay. This is a fun question. I'm not sure what it means. What do you think of when I say NAMI on wheels?
I think of Meals on Wheels. I'm sure, Diane, that's not what that means, but that's what I think of.
Yeah, it does bring that to mind. Automobile. That's a comment in the chat, add automobile, like a NAMI car. I know some state offices have NAMI vehicles with a big wrap on them. It's sort of like a roving advertisement, which is kind of fun. Diane, maybe you could say a little bit more about that concept. I'm not sure we know where to go. Okay, so have a car that's an advertisement on the go. All right, thank you for that question. I think this will be our last question. It feels to me like we're kind of stretching here. Garry, what book are you currently reading? And Judy, if you have one too.
I'm reading a book right now. It's by a psychotherapist named Dan Allender, and the book is called To Be Told. It's written from a Christian perspective, but I think it has real value. I think even to people that are. It's primarily written for a Christian audience, but has value for those that are outside of Christian audience. His argument is that as human beings, we're hardwired for stories and narrative. And he argues that the narratives that we tell about our own lives affect how we understand our own identity and how we interact with the world. And so he's talking a lot, and he from a perspective of God, but he talks a lot about learning how to read the stories of your life, the themes of your life, the good, but also the traumatic. And that we need to learn not only how to tell our stories, but also to listen to others and their stories. So I haven't gotten too far into the book yet, but I think it's going to be a really, really good one. It's called To Be Told.
To Be Told. So put that on your list, everyone. I have to tell a funny story regarding Garry and books. You ordered a book from Amazon that came to the office, and it was called How to Have a Difficult Conversation. And the staff saw it before you did, and we were all whispering one to another, oh my gosh, who's he going to have that difficult conversation with? No, is it you? Is it me?
Oh,
Judy, any thoughts about what you're reading these days?
Well, what I have on my nightstand is Barack Obama's first presidential book, but I have not opened its 700 pages yet.
Ooh, that's a lot of pages.
One thing that we do here at our office is we get books and we read them and we pass them on to the next person here in the office. We How to Be an Anti-Racist is making its way through it. I'm now the second person in line who's reading Wilmington's Lie. And so it's been a really sort of a fun thing where one of us will read a book and then pass it on to another staff member. And they sort of generate some of our conversations that we have on Teams, but also when we're together.
That's a great idea.
It is. I'm writing notes to myself on those books. And also, I want to mention we're having some authors this month on Thursdays with NAMI. So if you'd like to check out these books in advance and come and meet the author next week or the following week, we've got Noah Schizophrenia, My Quest for the Truth. And that is by a woman named Carter Diamond, Cartar Diamond, Noah Schizophrenia. And the following week, we'll have a book called Journey to the Sun, S-O-N, Journey to the Sun by Carla Carlisle. She is a Charlotte native. And so both of these NAMI-related books will be discussed in coming weeks. Noah Schizophrenia, that was her son living with mental illness and how she dealt with it, how the system, not surprisingly, let them down. And Journey to the Sun is a fascinating story, a quick read, about a woman who adopts a boy and then the birth mother wants him back, and the process of going back and forth and how they ultimately resolved a custody battle that was very difficult. The authors' names are Carla Carlisle for Journey to the Sun and Carter Diamond, C-A-R-T-A-R Diamond, the way it sounds. She wrote Noah Schizophrenia. So I'd love to see anyone there, whether or not you've read the book, but as long as I'm giving you a heads up, they're both good reads, so please check them out. And I think it feels to me like our energy is kind of wrapping up. We start at 7 and we go 60 to 90 minutes, whatever feels right. Do you have any closing statements, Judy or Garry?
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity, Peg, to be on. And I enjoyed chatting with everyone. And I just want to wish everybody a happy, healthy 2021. And I look forward to seeing everyone when we can come back together in person.
Thank you. Likewise.
And for me, Peg, one question that you often ask on Thursdays with NAMI is what gives you hope? And I've been thinking about that question, about what gives me hope. And I think what gives me hope, and I think this is what I'd like to close my portion with. When I turn off Facebook, when I turn off 24-hour news cycle, when I turn off Twitter, you would think by being on those platforms that everybody in the world hates everybody and that everything is going horribly. When I turn those off, what I see is staff members, board members, affiliate leaders from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic classes, different political perspectives, different religions, and they're listening to each other. They're truly listening to each other. And that gives me hope. There's not enough people, there's a lot of people sharing their feelings in this world, not a lot of people that are really listening. And when I see the people at NAMI really listening, that gives me untold hope.
Well, I can't think of a better note to end on. Thank you so much, Judy and Garry, for your time. And again, it's been a pleasure to have you. Thanks to Gail Pruitt. Thanks to Gail, our psychiatric nurse, who's so gracious about helping out on our chat box, and she works in the office with us too, where she does a million and one things. So have a great week, everyone. Thank you for being with us tonight. Go where you need to go. Do what you need to do to remain safe. And we'll see you next week on Thursdays with NAMI.
Thank you, Peg.
Thank you.
Night all.